Good morning, friends. Welcome to OBEJournal 2019, number 6. And we are continuing on directly from the previous session, number 5, with the work of Vee Van Dam. This time the book is called Starcraft, published around the same time, 88 to 91, by Scoop Books in England, and an author who hasn't quite got his due in the esoteric field, not because of lack of quality of the work, but perhaps not the best distribution, and seemingly not to ever have been online. I was told this by someone else in England, 15 years ago. He wasn't interested, or, I'm just not sure. But that sort of far-reaching immortality that one achieves by going online, it was not the case for him. I haven't checked recently to see where he might be in that world, but I will. In this book, he talks about and channels Devas, and it's probably the most extensive channeling of Devas I've come across. But that doesn't mean there isn't, one that's more extensive that I haven't come across. But so far, and he goes deeper into, with the perhaps exception of Jeffrey. The Theosophist that wrote about Devas and interacted with Devas. His book was Kingdom of the Gods, Brotherhood of Angels and Men. His stuff was done between the 30s and the 50s. With the possible exception of that gentleman whose name I don't quite remember. Jeffrey something or other. This is the most extensive. Obviously I'll be reading sections, it's a large book. Understanding Devas, from the section Working with Devas. It is almost impossible for you to understand us fully unless you become aligned with us, regardless of anything that we might say about ourselves. And even if you are of good intellect, our own perceptions of the world, of life, are quite different from yours. This conditions the way we are, the way we live, the way we do things. When dealing with different Devas, you will also find us all quite dissimilar. Some of us small Devas are only able to deal with certain tasks in nature. Fairies, elves. Others are quite capable of emulating your own self-projection and can take on body forms. Others yet are far too advanced and too preoccupied with world's affairs with regard to supernature to be in any way affected by what you do, whether it be good, bad, or plain indifferent. They're all in a different range. All Devas specialize in doing certain things. And there is what we might call a Devic hierarchy. In fact, there are several, ranging from the smallest of elementals all the way up to the great cosmic Devas. You yourselves are only likely to deal with certain types of Devas, including your solar Devas, who are your counterparts. Your solar Devas can put you in touch with everything you need to know about Devas. Now you remember the discussion of solar Devas in number 5, and his account of merging with his solar Deva, which is similar but not identical to others talking about merging with higher self. Therefore, the task ahead of you, if you want to work with us, is to become acquainted with your solar devas. And here we will say a bit more about these. They are the production of an evolution which took place in other solar systems. And therefore, they are not evolving concurrently with you. In that sense, you and us, speaking as solar devas, are not two equal life waves which started out at the same time, dividing into humans and into solar devas. We evolved our sense of being in totally different ways to the manner in which you are presently evolving yours. We started small, and we grew bigger in evolutionary terms. We lived lives in which we were creative, even artistic, and preoccupied ourselves with things which you would scarcely understand. It has been said in some of your esoteric books that we lived in the previous incarnation of this solar system. That is both true and untrue. We did indeed have our representatives in this previous solar system, but many of us, if not most of us, addressing you here at present, lived and evolved in other systems, including some which are not in this galaxy. We had to evolve first before you could be born as human beings, for we are, if you like, your forerunners, the prototypes of the human type. We evolved in such a way that we would be able to be of assistance to you in the times to come. And at that time we didn't know this, however, much in the same way that you are the forerunners of others who will be born in future times, thousands of millions of your years from now. The fact that we were of Devic extraction does not belittle this point. The fact that we are, in effect, your forerunners. This is why we find it relatively easy to address you in this way. We can empathize with the conditions in which you have to live. We experience conditions which, while quite different, were nevertheless relatively similar to those you experience now. Now then, some of us went well beyond the range of the cosmic planes, which are accessible by even the most advanced human adepts. We also left fragments of ourselves behind. Those of us who are speaking to you now are those fragments, and more specifically, fragments of those fragments. We elected to stay behind, to guide the evolving races on various worlds, including your own, and to be present whenever you were to become ready to merge with us, so that our two streams could be rejoined as one. We have been called devas, angels, demons in the Greek sense, winged ones, flying serpents, and many other things. Each religious trend has called us one thing or another, some reviling us, some making us the allies of the god, goddess, some interpreting us as part of your super psyches, etc. Since most religionists don't know much about what they are talking about, they scarcely understand what we are, what we represent, or what our task is. We have acted as messengers, as dream guides, as allies of sorcerers, as helpers, as ideals. Can you understand us a bit better now? Working with us is not difficult, and it is not easy. We aim not to confuse you by saying this, it is simply true. Assuming that you care to align yourselves with us, you will find us more than willing to assist you. In a sense, this is what we represent to you. Some is called as guardian angels, with good reason. To know us fully, you will have to learn to keep your consciousness as high as possible, without indulging too much in artificial ways of begetting that state of consciousness. Furthermore, we can be known and experienced as discharges of electrical power. You will need to be able to take that electrical charge without flinching, and then learn to channel it creatively in some fashion or other, as may be pertinent. One of the reasons we have been known as flying serpents is because our interaction with humans produces an upsurge of the Kundalini power, the so-called serpent power. We are Shakti, we are electricity, we are Deva power. leaving behind what is mentioned about us in some religious books, which in the main distort everything and are quite useless. We were known in the East as goddesses of fire. This was a way of portraying us from an archetypal point of view. That goddess of fire lives within you as Shakti Kundalini, a force which is normally dormant within you and housed as a coiled serpent at the bottom of your spines. Therefore, what you must do is learn to arouse, then use and direct that Kundalini force. And yet you will have to adapt to it first because it is supremely potent. And I would add, do it very carefully, under supervision and guidance. It's not something to be messed with. Above all else, the relationship is about co-creativity. We, by the virtue of our own relatively independent evolution, can and will deliver to you the net gain of that evolution. You will be gaining everything that we have evolved over many millions of years, so many millions to be worth counting. This represents a lot. Can you see the advantages in this? Then together we will engage ourselves in co-creativity, making worlds or whatever. You will then be in the driving seat and will be up to you to decide what it is to be done. Remember, we are the female side of the relationship, and in this regardless of whether you are man or woman. We are the ones who give birth. We gave birth to you in the esoteric sense. You, as the male side, will be the ones who tell us what you want to do, and we will implement your decisions. We will advise you, we will guide you, we will take care of the economy of our combined energies, and we will be forever wed. Once merged, there is no possibility of separation. Once the fusion has occurred, there is no way of destroying this relationship. It is then permanent. This is not likely to be something that you will in any way regret. The advantages of this association will be all too obvious to you. Also, you are already wed to us on internal levels. Therefore, what we are talking about is your ability to manifest this relationship at a conscious level. Bit by bit, you will feel our presence, and we will undoubtedly manifest ourselves to you in a variety of ways. Through your dreams, your visions, your experiences, your feelings, your perceived ideals, and so on. Bit by bit, you will feel like one of us. You will feel a need to become even as we are. This may even obsess you to begin with, yet obsessing you is not what we wish to achieve. This is a partnership, not a formula for schizophrenia. Energies alone are not the only things which must become merged. We have a body structure, and you presently have yours. They will become, and they will have to become, one and the same. To make this possible, you will have to go through certain Devic and human initiations, which will effectively rearrange your inner body structures and ours, so that the two can be merged without further hindrance. This will require this right sort of inputs and outputs of effort and receptivity on your part. We, on the other hand, are ready. You still have to make those efforts which will permit all this to happen. All manifested life is a dream. Think about that. That's profound. All manifested life is a dream. Even your physical environment is nothing but a solidified dream. What do we mean by dream? We mean that it is a projection of the mind. At one level, it is a projection of the Devic mind. At another level, it is a projection of all the minds of all the beings which exist. Your own world, as you have modeled around yourselves from a cultural and technological point of view, is a dream which you have projected into existence. We modeled the dream in the spirit worlds, and then we projected it into this one. And I personally believe we did that tens of thousands of years ago. And I've touched on that in some of my writings. It follows from saying this that you can change your dream at any time you wish, simply by invoking and projecting a different sort of dream. Just like we can alter things practically on the higher levels by projecting a different dreamscape. What we design and project conforms to certain laws of supernature and to certain Devic preoccupations within that. What we design and project has a particular purpose and its particular effect on all dreams, regardless of who they are projected by. Together we can alter the dreamscape, and this on various levels, and in accordance with the predominant needs. Before we can do this together, we must merge. Until then, you can modify your dream to the extent that you wish, and within the limits of your dreaming capabilities. What we can do together, however, is far more extensive once joined in consciousness and in being. Above all else, the dreamscape on various levels or planes needs to be coordinated in such a manner that we can input certain elements that will facilitate the general synchronization of energy elemental exchanges between these different levels. We are not permitted to do this until there are enough of you who are not only prepared to work with us, but also to merge with us. This synchronization leads to a more flowing and interconnected multi-plane environment. Again, quite profound. And I would encourage you to remember that the astral planes that we talk about most often are multi-leveled. And people on the quote-unquote lower levels tend not to be aware not only of the higher levels, but of the possibility of their existence, much the same way that materialists on the physical plane refuse to be aware of the spirit worlds on any level. For a moment, let us just say a few words about the physical plane on which you have your consciousness. We say it is a solidified dream. We say that it is a projection of the mind. It is not sufficient to say this alone, because a solidified dream always emanates from an astral dream. And when this is precipitated into physical existence, this astral dream is not fully reproduced at a physical level. Only parts of it are. If you look around your physical world, you could discern many different astral dreams. For in different places, people dream somewhat differently according to their inclination, and in each case, only a part of their astral dreams is reproduced. Also, in most cases, these astral dreams have to share the same physical space with other astral dreams. The result is a type of compromise in which no one dream predominates fully, even if there is a tendency towards, say, westernization. For a long time before the advent of your modern world, dreams were more distinct. You could go to, say, China, and you would have been confronted by one kind of dream. If you went to Africa, you would have encountered any number of small dreams. If you went and turned to anywhere else, you would have been confronted by other dreams. This is still the case, yet most dreams are now merging to form a greater dream. Is this an esoteric version of globalization? I think it is. In all the arguments about globalization and what the priorities of globalization should be, let us not forget that it is a process where we are all becoming one consciousness, one life form. In the West, we can look at it rather superficially by saying, well, these either tourists or refugees or immigrants that come to our, slightly more advanced way of life, culturally, politically, individual freedom wise. They want what we have, whether it be on the simplistic level, endless supplies of pop, or cars, or lifestyles freed from political and religious restrictions. That is the Western view of it. But while that is limited, it is indicative of the lifestyle that we're moving towards together, bit by bit. For a long time before the advent of your modern world, dreams were more distinct, of course, we've said that. To the extent that you decide to conform to a given dream, then that dream is precipitated. If you want to change it at a physical level, then first of all you have to change it at an astral level. If enough of you change it at an astral level, then things begin to change at a physical level, progressively over a period of time. If we were to work together, subject to merging our qualities and our essences, then we could speed up the amount of change which would or could happen. Before this becomes possible, we will have to align ourselves, you and us. Then we will be able to change the world quite dramatically in a relatively short space of time. Therefore, what we are offering is quite revolutionary. We can only implement it if there is enough of you ready to go through the process of personal change that is required before we can usefully merge our essences and attributes. Can this be done? Yes, it can and will, for some at least. What we are proposing is not easy. In addressing you in this manner, we know only too well that you are not uniform in your personal development, that some of you already have a good deal of development behind you, and you are adepts of a certain degree, even if in some cases you do not fully realize this. That's touching on what I've said to you many times, that outside the physical body, when we are projected, we are capable of a lot more than we either realize or remember. We only give ourselves snippets of understanding of this because it can be a little shocking. Here we are addressing those of you who are already fairly advanced and who can follow the gist of what we are saying and unfolding for you by way of a proposition. Others who have yet to be initiated will have to make the required effort to unmuddle their minds and emotions to the extent that they can progress toward a better contact with us, a better kind of contact. As with all things psychic, there are dangers, and we would not wish to minimize their importance. Let us say this much, and I think this little bit's important. Here we are in 2019. This book was put together around 1990, about 30 years ago. 100 years ago, we would have not have been able to put this forward, this proposition in these terms, except to a very few. The situation has changed greatly. Now there are thousands of you who can see enough of what is happening on internal levels to be able to appreciate what this proposed cooperation actually entails. Those of you who are clear about what we are saying will know that they are ready for its impact. Others who do not see so clearly, who have no great experience of the inner planes at a conscious level, may well wonder about where they stand in relationship to us and to this proposition. In all cases, if you are not clear about what we are proposing here, then you had better follow a more gentle path towards us. Reading this will not harm you. Trying to implement radical changes for yourselves when you may not be ready for them could do so. creating the perfect environment. If it were possible for us as Devas, and by this we mean predominantly our greater relatives, i.e. cosmic Devas, to make a perfect universe, whatever that might be considered to be, then we would undoubtedly do it. Yet each universe, each galaxy, each star, and each world is an experiment. It might be planned to a high degree on the cosmic planes, yet when precipitated, it often deviates from this plan. And then we have to deal with what we have effectively created. That, I think, is quite profound, and I think it could be used as an analogy to understand the creation of crop circles. Although some of them do look quite perfect, don't they? Nevertheless, having said this, our intent is to create perfect worlds and a perfect universe at all levels, if possible. Whenever we fail in doing this, we are also learning something, and next time we will do it much better. This leads in time to better worlds and a better universe. What do they mean by that? More perfect? It's a nebulous sort of concept, I agree. But you understand, or they make you understand it. They are trying to sort of make it better, no matter which planet or which plane they're working on. What you must remember is that we are evolving too. We are neither static nor are we perfect. There is perhaps no such thing as perfection anyway. Well, I would certainly agree with that. We manifest nature, and within our range of power, we make sure that the various so-called laws of nature are as exact as they can be, and this on different levels. Whatever it is that we do manifest works. That is something that we can take some credit for, otherwise you would not be here. However, we can see better ways of manifesting things as we progress. And for instance, we can safely say that we are working on improving not only the conditions on your world, but the actual human mold and its multi-leveled energy structures. In about 500 years from now, we will start to manifest this improvement, or at least by then it will start to become apparent, for we are already manifesting this new prototype in effect. It is just that it takes time for physical evolution to catch up with our inner thoughts and designs. This new human prototype will be more androgynous, although a measure of male and female polarity will still exist. If you would work with us, then much of what we have got in mind could become objective physically that much sooner. We are very aware that you are in the process of manifesting a new kind of race as well, of your own accord, based on computer technology. Don't forget, this is the 90s. Although you still have some way to go before you manage to obtain the flexibility and processing power which is necessary before that technological race can be considered to have been born or created. Therefore, we will have two new types of races which will be able to do things which you cannot presently do. None of this should distract you from remembering that what is really at stake is the consciousness side of things. A technological body, an androgynous human body of the 25th century, is only a type of vehicle for consciousness, which may offer certain advantages over the present human-type vehicles. Also, it should be remembered that your biological bodies are part of nature's technology. The interface that will be created between you as humans and those who will become human-created technological race will be very interesting. Are they talking about androids here and robots? Possibly. For one, ideally, it will help the other, and this in many different ways. The technological bodies will at first be nothing much more than very cleverly computerized intelligences. Then they will permit certain human spirits to incarnate directly into these type of vehicles. Thus, this technological race will be seen as an extension of the human race rather than something totally different. Then you will start to have interaction with beings from other places, and this in turn will lead to new departures and new types of created beings. And on this various levels, not only on the physical level, indeed on higher levels, much of this is not only occurring now, and it has been occurring for some considerable time. The net result is that your world will become much more pleasant to live in. It will no longer be necessary for you to work in order to make money to survive, yet you will work increasingly at what interests you, maximizing these interests in the process. Resources will be shared. My, won't that be nice? And within a short space of time, some of you will depart to other worlds, to other star systems even, physically and otherwise. It is not our intention here to tell you exactly what the future will be like, yet by working with us you will be able to do all sorts of things which are not presently possible. That's the technological bodies which will get to a certain level of evolution perfection, which will make the incarnation of human spirits, as they say, incarnating directly into these type of vehicles. And this technological race will be seen as an extension of the human race rather than as something totally different. So now for those working on this sort of thing right now, if they're materialist, they will not recognize the possibility of the human soul at all. But for those of us who have attained that understanding, without any threat of regression in our ideas, we can see that human souls will be able to incarnate into these bodies, if you so choose. And I would just as a sort of an addition or an analogy, we are seeing, of course, the production and evolution of hybrid bodies, hybrids between us and the greys, particularly. 2 or 3 researchers are working on this, and have different views. David Jacobs obviously has a more negative view than his colleague Barbara. But it's obviously happening. Enough research has been done that the hybrid beings are living amongst us now. And it's hard to say exactly how many, what the numbers are, hundreds, thousands, I'm not sure. But they're here. And they're learning to be human. So life forms created from seemingly different sources will be our future. And an intriguing future at that. Also, a whole world is made up of billions of different parts, big and small. As Devas, we have to specialize ourselves into different groups in order to address all those parts. Small Devas take care of very small things. We're talking, fairies, and, working with flowers and bushes and stuff. The greater Devas take care of the bigger things. Mountain ranges, valleys, lakes. By big and small, we do not necessarily mean size. Oh, well, I thought they did. We mostly mean complexity. To build or create different life forms, be they animate or relatively inanimate, Devas have to summon the appropriate energies, organize them, then precipitate them into the required forms. If these are highly complex, this effort requires a lot of coordination and a lot of power as well. It goes without saying that a human body requires a lot more concentrated effort than does a small plant. For instance, and a whole world requires considerably more energy and astute application than does a human body. Each archetypal form has its sound configuration. Creating complex forms requires several different sounds to be vibrated on the ethers. Then out of the ethers the forms take on shape. Then they must be consolidated so that they do not fall apart again. Therefore, certain sounds are used as a kind of glue. Then, in order to make sure that certain forms can develop and progress in evolutionary terms, other sounds must be implemented, and they must gradually change, which will cause the forms to change to adapt to environmental condition, etc. This constitutes a good deal of our work as Devas. Each one of us would like to eventually create a perfect world as a climax to our work as Devas. Every star in every galaxy presumably has this ideal at heart, yet rarely are things perfect, as we have already said. In another sense, everything is already perfect, in as far as it is the best that can be produced at this time, even if it will be improved upon later. Where there are faults which can be readily identified, we rectify these. Where there are problems which become manifest, although they were not foreseen in the first place, we attend to making whatever changes may be necessary. If you think that you work very hard, we work a lot harder, because we have to. Everything in the world depends on what we do for its sustenance and its growth. What you do is to complement what we do. At least this is ideally true, yet in practice many of you often cause new types of problems for us to solve. When enough of you finally come to realize that the cooperation between our life streams is possible, and not only possible but eventually highly desirable and necessary, then together we will manifest a world or worlds which will be as near perfect as they can be. What we have attempted to do here by passing on these thoughts and this information is to alert you to the possibilities, and to alert you somewhat to the coming events which are changing and will further change your world, which is also ours, although some of us also deal with other worlds, and some of us have come from afar to assist in this working. We are here only giving you a small glimpse of things. Seen from the vantage point of a liberated being, all this becomes much more powerful yet, and also extremely beautiful. Beauty is not just in the eye of the beholder. The universe really is beautiful. We are not just creators, we are also artists. And whenever you get to see some of the worlds that we have created, you will not doubt this. Some of us have come a long way to bring you this book, as far as the galaxy Andromeda, and even beyond that, although they are not directly represented here. What we have learned in the galaxy Andromeda is what we are trying to apply here, because it has worked very well indeed in our home galaxy. We will leave you with this thought, and although you may balk at this presentation of fact, and may in fact find it almost impossible to believe, in time you will realize that we as Devas travel to wherever our services and talents may be required. We salute you, knowing that one day, hopefully soon for some of you, that we will be joined, and then you will understand what the relationship is between the galaxy Andromeda and this galaxy, and a third galaxy as yet unmentioned. Needless to say, there's lots more there. And that may seem like a slight detour in the onward progress of our talks and meditations here. But since Vee Van Dam seemed to be the bridge between talking about out-of-body experiences, as we heard in the last episode, and talking about Devas and solar Devas, it seemed appropriate to me to get into that. Next, we will pursue other goals and more meditations, more guidance to out-of-body experiences. Similar but not identical to what we did in 2018. I feel it is necessary to really ram home this point about projecting yourself and interacting with spirit landscapes and spirit communities. And I was going to say the more interesting souls amongst the dead. And we've done that to some degree already. And if you haven't looked at my WordofGord spirit contacts, certainly do so. Talk to a lot of beings there, outside of the beings that we met, say, in the 2018 and 2017 OBE journals. I realize that it's a long trail, but it does sort of make sense when you follow it through. And I'm sure some of you would prefer a sort of guide to, like a sort of printed guide of this one talks about this, and this episode talks about that, and this personality's here, and something else is there. And I'm certainly thinking of providing such a guide, but there are a lot of avenues to explore in this work, and only so many minutes in the week, shall we say. And certainly I would encourage any of you who wish to email me or message me with your own experiences or suggestions or questions, please do so. I get a few, and I'm sure more of you are thinking over these matters and perhaps are a little too shy. But your contribution to this is ongoing and significant. I am but a mouthpiece for the consciousness that seeks to express itself through me, he said with a great profundity. So, until next time, which will be sooner than you think, I wish you all well in your out-of-body adventures.